Okay, so Scream 5, as I'm going to call it. You can call it whatever you want. Scream 2022, the second Scream, well, the fifth Scream, but the second movie named Scream, doing the same thing that Halloween did, but there's actually 3 movies named Halloween. But anyways, this is the newest Scream, and the first one without Wes Craven as its director. Now, let me just say real quick before I get into anything about the movie, that I am a huge horror movie fan. Obviously, I'm a fan of the Scream franchise, and more so than that, I'm a fan of Wes Craven. Wes Craven is one of my favorite directors of all time, whether it's his raw, gritty beginnings with Last House on the Left, Hills Have Eyes, that sort of like 70s, darker, kind of grittier, low-budget horror movie, or when he propelled into ultimate godfather of horror director stardom with Nightmare on Elm Street. And of course there's People Under the Stairs, there is Shocker, there's Serpent and the Rainbow, and of course the Scream franchise. And the first Scream did something very, very unique at the time and propelled this whole new wave of 90s horror movies, where they did this sort of meta self-referential self-awareness of being in a horror movie type movie written by Kevin Williamson. He did a bunch of movies like that, like The Faculty did with sci-fi films and whatnot. So the Scream has always been a movie that's sort of it's sort of like a satire in itself. It's sort of a comedy satire, but at the same time it's a legitimate horror movie. So basically what it's doing is pointing out all the rules, all the tropes, all the things that you've seen a million times in horror movies, and basically saying that even though all of those things exist, even if you were in those scenarios, from a viewer standpoint, you want to say that oh, it's obvious you would just do this or just outsmart the killer this way. But the irony is, when it happens in real time, in real life to you, you're sort of susceptible to the same things that happen to the characters in the movies. And sort of one of the coolest things about the Scream franchise in particular has a lot of good things going for it, actually. So one of the things is that it's that self-referential, it's that meta sort of film style, where Scream 2 was about sequels and how they're never as good as the original. Scream 3 was about trilogies. 4 was about remakes. And now this one, Scream 5, is about requels, which is basically this trend going on in Hollywood right now, where you take the existing franchise, you don't reboot it, you make a sequel, but you add in a whole new cast, a younger cast, but you bring in some of the older cast members to kind of help pass the torch. They did it with Force Awakens, with Star Wars, Creed, with the Rocky franchise. There's a bunch of movies that are doing this now, the new Ghostbusters, so that's a thing to play on now, and so it's kind of the perfect time to bring that back. However, this movie is not directed by Wes Craven because he unfortunately passed away a few years ago, and so my biggest concern going into this movie was, is it going to be, let's say, disrespectful to Wes Craven's legacy, since he wasn't... This is the only franchise where he directed every single film in the franchise. Nightmare on Elm Street, he directed 2 of the movies, but Scream, he directed all of them. So Scream 5 without Wes Craven was the biggest hurdle for me to get over, but I could tell after watching this movie that they really did put a lot of love, care, attention into this franchise, the things that make this franchise fun and exciting, and the thing that separates Scream from other horror movies. The other thing that separates Scream from other horror movies is the fact that we have a returning cast from film to film. Usually in a lot of the franchise slasher films, we get a completely new cast in every movie. So we have, of course, Sidney Prescott, Gale Weathers, and Officer Dewey, who are in all the movies. And the final thing that separates Scream from other slasher films is that there's always a different killer. So part of it is sort of the murder mystery of trying to uncover who the killer is, which adds the fun and excitement to the movie, because the entire film, you're wondering, is it this person? Is it that person? It's leading me to believe it's this person, but it's too obvious, so maybe it's this person over here. So that's one of the most fun aspects of the Scream franchise, and this movie has all that. So all that's there. The kills are good for the most part, which is, of course, one of the main things that you want to see when you see a slasher movie, is you want good kills. Killer kills with a knife. Things can get brutal. Things can get dark. There's a lot of, stabbing. But here's the thing about this movie, is that it really does, as it's self-aware and meta and knows that it's a requel or whatever, where it's rebooting the franchise but bringing in the older characters. This is the first Scream movie where Sidney is not the main character. She is not. In fact, Sydney, the main three that have been in all the Scream movies, Sydney, Gale, and Officer Dewey, are secondary characters in this movie. Now, this is something that, to me, could, like, really make or break this film. Like, do you really want to do that? Do you want to take these characters that have been through all of these movies, that have been the central focus point of all of these films, and now have them be supporting characters? But the surprising thing to me about this movie is that it kind of worked. So our lead character here is Sam Carpenter. Of course, they always use the last names, like John Carpenter or whatever, played by Melissa Barrera. First of all, this chick is gorgeous as fuck. I enjoyed looking at her at every single scene in this movie. Sign me up. Okay. But besides that, horniness aside, I will bonk myself later, I promise, in more ways than one. But she was a great lead character, I have to say. I have to say that she was a great lead character. Her whole place amongst this universe of the Scream franchise, how she fits in, I don't think it was forced that bad. I think it worked, and I think that she really carried the movie very well as the focal character and as the character that's trying to protect her sister. She has a younger sister as well in this movie, a boyfriend, and she's just trying to figure out who this killer is because it is sort of like directly related to her situation, and I thought she did a really good job. Like, the fact that you could have a Scream movie with a main character who's not Sydney, and have it work was shocking to me. So I was impressed, and I was on board with her situation. I thought her acting was good. She has some things going on with her. I'll get into spoilers here in a moment after I just sort of talk about my general thoughts. But I was surprised. I was surprised that it worked. Now, I would have preferred the movie to center around our main characters because these are the characters I love, I grew up with, right? And that we've known since the first movie. So, of course, I want to see Sydney, Gale, and Dewey. And I think that Dewey has a lot of really great things to do in this movie. Don't get me wrong. It's not that because they're secondary characters means they're not really in the movie at all. They definitely are, but the movie definitely does not try to put them front and center other than when they need to be. So it's kind of strange because I kind of... if you were to ask me if I would have enjoyed this movie without them being in the lead, I would have said no. Having seen the movie, I thought it was pretty enjoyable regardless. I don't think it's near the top of the best in the Scream movies. Obviously, the original is the best. Scream 2 would be my second favorite. Then probably 4, then 5, then 3. So it's better than 3. So you have that. But it's enjoyable. It's entertaining. The kills are good. The mystery is good. The whole whodunit, trying to figure out who the killer is. All that's good. There are things that I really didn't like about the movie as well, though, and a lot of that has to do with the final act, which I can't really talk about unless I talk about spoilers. So I would say it's sort of a middle-of-the-road movie for me, where there were aspects of it that I really enjoyed, and I thought it did well as far as paying respects to the Scream franchise, not trampling over Wes Craven's grave or anything like that. I don't really think it was a necessary movie to make, but it was entertaining. It felt like a Scream movie, but there were definitely things that I really didn't like about it, but most of that is spoiler stuff, so I can't talk about it until right now. So if you're curious about it, I'd say go check it out if you're a big Scream fan. If you don't really care about Scream or the franchise or horror movies, it's definitely not going to be your cup of tea. So there's that. So from this point on in the video, I'm going to talk about spoilers, so you've been warned, so let's get into it. So I think this movie completely falls apart in the final act. I think that this movie was trying to take the Scream franchise as we know it, take the tropes of it, and, do what every Scream movie has done, be meta about it, point out its faults and things like that. But the finale of this movie I felt was very lackluster. First of all, the finale of this movie takes place at Stu's house, Stu being one of the killers of the original film. There was a lot of talk in the fandom of whether or not Stu was going to come back from this movie. A lot of people wanted to see Matthew Lillard return, because we never actually saw his body at the end of the first Scream. So we wanted to see him come back. He's not in this movie at all. He's actually barely mentioned. It's pretty much just mentioned that that's his house. And I thought everything that happened at his house at the end of the movie just really didn't feel like a final act. Like, I didn't feel like there was enough there. I felt it went straight from 0 to 100 to the point where there wasn't really like a big chase scene throughout the house. The reveals of the killers at the end, where it was the boyfriend character and Amber, I felt like were just like bam, just sort of like in your face. Like it wasn't as big of a shocking reveal as I wanted it to be. And they just did the same thing that every single Scream villain has done since the original, where they go into this long monologue, allow the characters to escape and attack them. But there wasn't like an epic chase scene. Like I remember the chase scene at the end of the original Scream. You know, Sydney goes all through Stu's house. We go like she falls out of the garage, and there's like the car scene and stuff like that. Like there's a lot of different elements to it, a lot of different pieces to the puzzle of that final act. In this movie, it's just like, we're the killers, into the kitchen, and the killers are dead. And it's just like, I didn't like that about it. Also, we have the death of Dewey in this movie as well. Now, I expected one of the main three to die. Reason being is that this is Scream 5, and you made it through this many movies. I thought one of them was going to die in Scream 4 when that came out 10 years ago. You know, I thought Dewey died in Scream 2 when he got stabbed, right? But they decided to keep him alive. So Dewey was probably the one I would see on the chopping block the most, especially that he's usually the most, because he's a police officer, you know, he's the most proactive about going out and trying to take down the ghost face killer. But I hated the way that it was done, because I first of all, once you reveal who the killers were, now because of that hospital scene where he rescued, I think Keith, or what was the boyfriend's character's name? I don't know. So he's there. So that means that the other killer in that scene was Amber. And I'm sorry, but knowing that, even if she's wearing body armor, there's no way that Amber has the physical strength to overpower a grown man. She's like 17 years old. Dewey is like 50. And I know Dewey's like, he said, you know, I got a limp, I've been stabbed. But like, I just don't buy that she was able to physically overpower Dewey in that moment and stab him the way that she did, with the force and strength that she did. I'm sorry, she's got to be taking some super soldier serum or something. Like, I just didn't buy it whatsoever, and I wouldn't have known that until the end of the movie. And then thinking about it later, I'm like, there's no way she could have physically overpowered Dewey, and that's what kind of pissed me off about it. Dewey should not have gone out by that, and if he did, I don't want to sound like sexist or anything, but it should have been the grown man character, not the 17-year-old girl. You know what I mean? Like, it just didn't. I don't know. It's suspension of disbelief. I know it's a horror movie, but good God, like, this is Dewey. This is the guy that's been here for 5 movies now. And I okay, I understand killing him off. I understand that, but it should have been the other killer. That's all I'm saying. The other thing here that we have is, what's her name? Melissa Barrera is the actress. I memorized that. Her character, Sam. Yeah, Sam Carpenter. Okay, so she's the daughter of Billy Loomis. So Billy Loomis apparently knocked up some chick while he was dating Sydney. I don't know. And her family was torn apart, and like all that you'll see in the movie, whatever. But basically, she's having visions of her dead father. And the visions, at first, it seems like maybe a red herring to throw you into the mindset that maybe she's the killer. And, you know, maybe she's, you know, the lineage is moving down the line, and she's picking up where Billy left off and everything. I never really thought she was. I really thought that was a red herring the whole way. But the thing that I didn't like about this was that it felt like something very supernatural was happening in the movie, and Scream has always been like a physical, grounded thing. Like, these are real people. You know, this isn't like a Michael Myers, Jason sort of thing. Like, these are just human beings with a knife. You know, that's Scream. And that's what makes it scary too, is because it's like anybody could decide to be a serial killer, you know, and stalk you, enter your home, and just stab the shit out of you. That's why I keep machetes in every room of the house. But anyways, I didn't like how she was communicating and having visions of Billy, because it felt supernatural to me. Like, it felt like she was actually seeing his ghost or something like that she wasn't talking to. And I know that it was just like a representation of like this traumatic part of her, like her acceptance of who her father was. Her father was a serial killer. And I know that it probably wasn't meant to be supernatural at all, but something about it still bugged me. And I think it was because of like the interaction between, like, there's a moment at the end where like her vision of Billy is sort of edging her and letting her know where the knife is in the house. And it's like, does she know where the knife is? Or is just this Billy vision telling her where the knife is? I don't know. So that bugged me. The final, like the third act bugged me. Dewey's death bugged me. And the fact that after this movie was over, you know, I thought it was a good like horror film, but it just didn't feel like it doesn't feel like it has a long-lasting impression. And I was really thinking that with the way that the trailers were being built up, with the rumors of Stu coming back, with the original cast coming back, I thought we were going to have some kind of like full circle amalgamation finale of the Scream franchise. You know, a send-off, like this is for Wes Craven, even says that in the credits. So I thought by doing that, it was going to bring like everything from all the Scream movies together and just sort of have like a full finale, which is why I expected one of the main three to die or multiple. But instead, it did turn out to be that requel thing where now they can move forward with Sam's character, and in the next Scream movie, they might not even need to have Sidney or Gale. And I don't know if I want Sidney or Gale without Dewey there. You know what I mean? And the fact that Dewey and Gale never got to like get back together. I mean, I guess that's what death is, though, right? You don't get closure on things. I don't know. Anyways, guys, if you saw Scream 5, let me know what you thought about it down below. I don't know how many horror film fans I have on my channel, but hey, you know what? I reviewed the movie anyway, so we're going to find out. So put all your thoughts, theories, comments about Scream 5 down below. Let me know what you thought. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and comment on it, because I probably won't even crack 1,000 views on this video, and it'll help me out in the algorithm if you can give it a little bit of interaction, a little bit of a like, comment sort of thing. Maybe share it too. I'd really appreciate it. It would mean a lot to me. Also, subscribe to the channel if you want to stick around and see more reviews. Other than that, guys, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And make sure you don't pick up the phone if you don't know who's on the other end, because it's probably about your car warranty.